This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it.
Ride.
Often, our beginnings, those early years in life, will imprint in our subconscious and form the stories that we tell ourselves. Those stories can either hold us back or propel us forward. So why is it that some people can escape challenging pasts while others fall down? Joining me today is Darrell Williams to share his story that began in Compton and brought him all the way to the White House. Welcome to the roller coaster, Darrell.
Lucy, thank you for having me.
That is an incredible, your bio is just an incredible story. So can you take us back to those early years where you were in Compton and then, sort of what your journey involved?
Sure. So I always tell people I grew up in Compton. For those that may be familiar, there's a movie called Boys in the Hood. So if they have seen that movie, that was the environment and the culture that I grew up in. And then there's another movie that came out a couple of years ago called Straight Out of Compton. And that was the environment that my brother and sister grew up in. So we're like 3, 6, and 7 years apart. And people always ask me like, oh my gosh, in that movie Boys in the Hood, that stuff really happened? Did they ad-lib a lot of that? I'm like, no, that was pretty much the culture that I grew up in. And I think at the time, Compton was the 4th most dangerous city in America during the time that I grew up in it. So definitely a lot of gang-related activities, a lot of drugs, definitely just a lot of things that most people are not exposed to unless you grew up in an inner city environment. And a lot of us were just trying to figure out our own path and how do we, make it in life based on, our surroundings and knowing that there's something else out there.
You said knowing that there was something else out there. Is that just knowing that there was life beyond what you were seeing in your everyday?
Absolutely. Because for me, I was very fortunate. I had 2 older cousins that were just extremely wise. And one of them, he would always invite me over his house, like on the weekends. And he was an accountant, had a great family, lived in a different area outside of Compton. And it was during those times where you can like, okay, wait a minute. Here's this older cousin that's an accountant doing really well. It's like, okay, what did he do, right, to have this different type of family structure and a different type of family environment? So just, being exposed to those type of things, opens up your eyes to say, okay, there's definitely something else out there. Now it's a matter of connecting the dots and how do I connect the dots for my own journey.
To be able to look at your cousin
Mm-hmm.
and have the wisdom to question, hey, wait a second. This is my environment. but here's a positive role model. And then to
Hmm.
be able to ask the question, well, what did he do differently? There's a lot of wisdom in that teenage version of yourself.
It was, and a lot of it, like I had a couple of friends that were close to me as we were all growing up in the same neighborhood, and you have certain friends that kind of see how they can fit in that environment, and then I had a few friends that saw beyond that environment. So those friends were kind of like my inner circle. So it was like, okay, what are you going to do, right? What are you planning on doing? And one of my friends, he was a year older than me. He got a full ride scholarship to USC, academic scholarship. And I was like, whoa, Rod, that is amazing. It's like you broke the mold, right? So that also motivated me. It's like, okay, if Rod can do it, now I got to figure out, my path, right? It may not be academic, but it's definitely going to be something that's going to get me on to whatever it is that life has in store for me.
So it sounds like what was really key for you and your ability to look beyond your current circumstances was that you were able to forge a very supportive circle, that network of people around you that had your best interests.
No, you're exactly right. And that's one thing I do when I do leadership coaching. I always talk to everyone. It doesn't matter what environment you're in, what organization you work for, there's always a mentor, a coach, somebody there that's willing to impart wisdom into those who are willing and are looking for it. And for me, like I said, I found it early, right, with my cousin, with close friends. And then eventually I ended up joining the United States Army, was there for 20 years. And throughout my time in the Army, I've always found a mentor at every step of the road to point me in the right direction.
And what do you look for in a mentor? Because, people come and go in our lives,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but there's only, very few people that could actually engage as that role of a mentor.
Exactly. So I would say to anyone that's looking for a mentor, first of all, you have to look for someone, right, um, similar to you in the sense of there's something about that person that I like, and I want to go in that direction as well, right? So similar to you, but also has accomplished or done or is doing something that you feel like I can add that to my life, right? So I talk to a lot of young men that say, hey, I want to do X. So it's like, okay, do you have any uncles or relatives, um, people in your neighborhood, people in your school, right? Have you explained to them the path that you want to go on? Because I tell them, once you let people know where you're going, then it's easier for them to connect you with people that are already there, right? So you're looking for people that have already done that. And then I always tell people mentors are for anyone in any situation, whether it's a young mother, a young father, a married couple, obviously professional wise, mentors are tremendous assets for anyone's journey.
And mentors, if somebody's listening and they're looking in their environment and they don't, they can't identify, that person they can relate to that can become their mentor, you don't necessarily have to have, everyday conversations or physical contact with that person. I know for myself, when I began my growth journey, my mentors were the people whose videos I saw on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
learned so much from, videos and listening and hearing people's stories, because that's where, one, you can see yourself
Yes.
in somebody else. And once you can find that person whose story you can relate to and that you can say, wait a second, I can see me there. Well, if you see yourself in who they were, well, then why can't you follow a similar path and have the same success and growth that that person had?
You're absolutely right. And another thing about a mentor, is sometimes they will see something in you that you don't yet see in yourself, because they see their younger version of them in you. And that's what's so great about mentors, because oftentimes they can help propel you to that next step where you're not even thinking about, oh no, I don't think I could ever start a podcast. That's not me. I'm not a speaker. But they start bringing out those things in you that are good, right? And you start connecting like, well, okay, based on what they said, I am those things. So maybe I could start a podcast, right? So that's what's so good about mentors. They sometimes give us that confidence that we may not know that we need or are looking for. And then a lot of times I also tell people, when you make connections or you, like say, come across an author, a lot of times, unless they're really just these big, huge superstars, a lot of times you can just reach out to people and you'd be surprised how many of them will reach back and say, hey, appreciate you following. Let's connect. And you're like, holy smoke, this person actually responded back to me. And that's what's so beautiful about mentors. They can come in different fashions from different ways, but sometimes we just have to take that initial step to reach out and initiate that connection.
And mentors help us see those positive attributes that we have, that because of the stories we've been telling ourselves, we have blinders on. But our mentors can sit there and go, no, 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 wait a second. Do you realize that? And then sometimes all it takes is another individual pinpointing something for us, that instantly we become aware, we can acknowledge it, and then build off of it.
That's exactly right, Lucy. And a lot of times, I always share with people, they're like, well, how do you find a mentor? I don't know anyone. And I always say, well, sometimes in life, we're so busy doing life that we rarely take the time to just pause, reflect, and look at what's around us. I have found that a lot of times there's mentors all around us, but we're so busy, right? We kind of miss out on what's right in front of us, right? I always share with people, sometimes it's just like people are trying to get into a serious relationship, right? They have this list of what they're looking for, right? And sometimes that list is not realistic, right? Because they have all these things out there. And it's like, after a while, you're like, okay, I started off with thinking I wanted this, 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 and this. But when I really look at the list, honestly, this is really all I was looking for. And it's the same thing with mentors. When you start just slowing down and looking at what is it you really want, where do you really want to go? And then you pause, you're like, wait a minute. Uncle Joe is a carpenter. I forgot all about that. Let me reach out to Uncle Joe. Or, so-and-so is in the HVAC industry. I forgot all about that, right? My high school teacher, my college professor, they had told me one time, if I ever wanted to go into XYZ direction, hey, give me a call. And we just overlook those things because sometimes when we look for a mentor, we think it's going to be this bright message in the sky that says, Lucy Quigley is going to be your mentor. Call her. It's not like that. It's really as simple as, oh, wait a minute. I had that information before. Now I just need to go back and act on it.
And a lot of the time, we can be afraid to reach out to these people because, again, the stories we tell ourselves are too busy. They don't have time for us. But the really good mentors, the ones that that you're meant to be connected with, they're the ones that have gone through hell and they want to turn around and help the other person. It goes back to that, each one teach one.
Absolutely. And I always share with anyone, even on my job, I'm a mentor in my organization. And I talk to people like, so how'd you get involved in the program? And they're like, oh, somebody told me I should do this. And I was scared and didn't want to do it. And I always tell people, let somebody else tell you no. Right? Don't ever say no on behalf of somebody else when there could be a yes waiting for you.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. So after you graduated from high school, you spent 20 years in the military. What came after that?
So I have to back up a little bit. So while I was in the military, I was very fortunate to have what they call special assignments, right? There's regular assignments, Fort Bragg, Fort Hood, those types of places. But then I was very fortunate because of the mentor that I had. They steered me on a different path to what they call special assignments. So my special assignments led me to the White House Communications Agency, right? An agency that provides communication support to the president, vice president, first lady, and White House staff, Secret Service as directed. And had two separate assignments there. The first time it was under Bush Senior and President Clinton administration. Then I left for a year. They brought me back. Then I supported Vice President Gore and then eventually Vice President Cheney before I left. So I did that total of 15 years, and everything that every person that I met that I thought was influential, I made sure I connected with them on a personal level. So they became my mentors. So before I retired out of the military, I was just taking in all these leadership lessons and coaching and all this. And then it was like, okay, now it's my time to also pay it forward in a different way. So I ended up retiring from the military, started my local speaking business because I did so much travel back then. I had a 1-year-old and I told my wife, I'm not going to find a job that's going to do a lot of travel. I want to plant some roots. So I got the speaking business started, and then I went back and just found a local job. So I actually, for the first 5 years when I came out of the military, I taught at the White House Communication Agency Training Academy, and I taught leadership, right? And how to do your job on the road. And then from there, I worked for the government, and that's where I've been now for the last 11 years as Chief of Military Human Resources for a government agency in DC. But along the way, I found different ways to help out, whether it's in the community, different schools, because I'm very, very big on giving back.
And that's what you do now, is that you're a coach and you help people.
Yes. So I do coaching through my business, Alliance Seminars coaching, and I primarily focus on 3 areas, which are leaderships, relationship, and purpose, right? Because a lot of my mentors, and I was trying to figure out, I've had this great successful career. How do I give back? And one of the widest things they told me was, what's your passion? What's your purpose? What are you good at? So it was like, I didn't have to go look for anything. It's like, well, wait a minute. I'm good in leadership. I'm good in developing and nurturing relationships. And I'm good at helping people find their purpose. And it was kind of like, duh, those are the areas you need to pay back with people, right? And it was really just like that. So everything is set up around trying to give back. And that's one thing I found, Lucy. If you really want to give back to the community in whatever area you want to, life will always present those opportunities for you.
It does. The more, and it's a lesson that I've learned a lot, is that, often we get caught up in trying to get things. And it can almost seem like whatever you're trying to get is always out of reach, because we're coming at it from the wrong angle. And when you come at things with a giving heart, where you're, for whatever reason, you are where you are in your life, and you acknowledge that there's something in you that you can share, that you can help somebody else. That's what opens up that giving nature. And by opening yourself up to that, somehow, some way, beautiful gifts start coming into your life.
Absolutely. And one thing I share with people along that same path, they will often say things like, well, my background was so different. It was so difficult, right? I didn't have the, model parenting relationship or thing like that. I'm like, but that's okay, because that's the goodness about life. Whatever we were dealt with, right? It also still teaches us a lesson. Like even growing up in Compton, right? It taught me mental toughness, right? Going into the military, it taught me discipline. right? So regardless of where you are on your path, I tell people in life, everything that happens to you does happen to you for a reason. There are some things that happen that are out of your control, right? But you can still turn that into a life learned lesson of, okay, now that this has happened, this is how I'm going to deal with it. And that whole process of how you're dealing with it is, like you said, that key that you may find yourself passing that on to somebody else that's coming behind you and say, hey, you might not want to go in that direction. Here's what happened to me. And next thing you know, they're like, wow, you could have allowed me just to walk right into that hole. Why did you, tell me about what happened with you? Is that because I fell in the hole doesn't mean you have to fall in the hole, right? I want you to be able to walk around the hole. And then after that, I want you to help others, because that's what's the goodness about paying it forward. You never know how far it's going to reach and who it's going to affect. And like you said, when you have that giving heart, that giving back heart, and I was talking to people, they're like, well, I don't have Oprah money, so I can't do those type of things. I said, yeah. I said, but it's one thing that you have that everybody on this earth has, and that's time. Treat your time like you treat money, right? And be precious about who you're going to give it to. And like you said, don't have that closed fist, because when you have a closed fist, you can't receive anything. But when you have an open hand, right, that means that you can also receive more. So treat your time as money and give it to those who can benefit from it.
And really, that's really the premise behind the Roller Coaster podcast, is because I hit a crisis point in my life. And I remember how lost I was. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know how to help myself. And it was it sucked. And it was horrible. And now that I figured out a lot of things, well, that's the purpose of the podcast is I tell people not every episode is for everybody, but everybody can find an episode, because I purposely look for the different stories. I look for the different coaches, the different tools that we can encompass in our life. And, something might not be for you, but you can find something. And, that's my giving, is through the podcast. And, I've done my dues, I've put in my time, and now I'm starting to see those things come back. But along the way, I realized that while I was giving, I was forgetting to open myself up to receive. Because, as crazy as this sounds, asking for me, I still kind of thought asking for help was a sign of weakness. And that was something that I had to overcome and open myself up. Because if you think of it, everything has balance. If I'm giving, well, somebody else is receiving. So I need to be in the receiving mode as well. I'm giving, but I also need to be open to receiving.
No, that is absolutely correct. And a lot of leaders that I coach and deal with, a lot of husbands, when I do relationship coaching, they definitely fall in those categories of, I'm supposed to be the giver. I'm supposed to continue to do. And I'm like, yeah, but how can an empty cup pour into someone? To this day, no one has ever been able to answer that question, because the answer is you cannot. You may think you are, but you're not, right? You're just going on fumes, and it's just only by grace that you haven't tilted over yet because of everything that you're putting out. But eventually, and I tell them, this is how life is. Your body will shut down. Your mind will get your attention, right? Something will say, enough is enough. You're pouring out more than what you're taking in. So I'm going to sit you down, whether it's through pneumonia, some type of health reason, whatever it is, life will get our attention. And it's up to us to say, okay, what else, like you said, am I supposed to learn in this particular season, right? What have I not done yet, right? What box or gifts have I not opened that's still waiting for me to open it? Because when we open up those different gifts that's inside of us, not only do we receive the gift, but somebody else also benefits from the gift.
And, for me, it was because I'd been pouring from an empty cup
See?
that led to my crisis point. And
Yeah.
for me, it was a mental crisis. And when I look back, it was horrible. Like I can still remember how alone I felt. But I look back and everything that I went through were the building blocks, the foundation for what I'm doing now. I can look back to what I went through, acknowledge that it was painful, but also see and be grateful and what I've been able to extract from that. I could have chosen to let it pull me down. I could have let myself be at rock bottom and stay there. I don't know where I would be today. I probably wouldn't be, but I can look back with gratitude.
Yes, absolutely. And I would definitely say for anyone that may feel like they're in that situation or like this is exactly the episode or show that I needed to hear, they need to understand that they're not by themselves. Like we've all gone through some sort of crisis. Like I've gone through many in my life, right? Some that I caused, right? And some that I fell into. But the good news is, regardless of what type of tunnel that anybody is in, there's always light at the end of that tunnel. It's just a matter of us staying the course, right? And realizing that, life really is like a game of cards. Right? I don't care what game you like, right? We're all dealt different cards, right? And the difference is there are some people that sit there their whole time and complain about the cards they're dealt. Or then there are those that say, okay, now that I got these cards, how do I play them? And once you figure that piece out, I don't care what it is, whether it's your marriage, school, your business, when you figure out and get into the right mindset that how do I play the cards that I've been dealt? That's when you start seeing things change and happen in your life.
I was going to ask you for your final thoughts and words of wisdom, but I think you summed it up so beautifully in that game of cards and how we choose to play them. So Darrell, how is it that people can best connect with you?
Sure, they can connect with me on Facebook, which is Alliance Seminars Coaching. And then they can also go to our website, which is www.allianceseminars.org. And again, I work with people in reference to leadership, relationships, and purpose. And my wife, Veronica, works with women under the premise of relationships, purpose, and women empowerment.
And you may remember Veronica from, I think her episode came out a couple of months ago, but I believe we were talking about relationships in that episode. So I will look up the episode number, make sure that's in the show notes so you can hear Veronica's conversation as well. And if you're looking to connect with Darrell, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And Darrell, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
No, it's an honor. And again, I love what you're doing as a podcast host because, again, you will never know all the people that you are influencing in such a positive way and giving them so much encouragement just from hearing all the different stories. So I'm glad that whatever it was that challenged you to be a podcast host, I'm glad you listened to the call.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.